I've made over 2000 samples so far, so here's what I've learned. Your loops will sound 20 times better when you fill out all the frequencies. So you have a proper bass in there, you have a low piano in there, maybe you have some high accents as well in there. And this will transform your loops and make them 20 times better, guaranteed. So here's a sample I recently made, and I took out all the high elements, I took out the low piano and the bass, and here's what that sounds like before. And just by adding a low piano, a bass and some high accents, it sounds completely different. Now, simple stuff like this will most likely transform your melodies, and if I knew that 5 years ago, my loops would have been way better back then. Second point, simplicity is key, but simplicity does not mean only adding 2 instances to a sample. For example, if you add 10 different instruments or sounds to your melody, it can still be simple. So it has nothing to do with the amount of instances. Many people get that wrong, and that's why their loops don't sound that good. I mean, layering sounds and adding like background sounds, background textures won't make your melody any more complex. So if you take this sample for example, there are 8 instances in there, but it still sounds simple. Just take a listen. And the reason that is because a lot of those sounds are just in the background. For example, this brass is just a background sound. Or this string here is also just laying in the background. And we have the piano and the bass just filling out all those frequencies, which doesn't make it any more complex, but makes it way more fire. The only really lead instances that are in there is this accent and those 2 midis, which you really hear. And the rest around it is just supporting cast. Don't limit your melodies by just having to keep it simple and just having to add only 2 to 3 instances. Add in 8, but make sure that only 2 or 3 instances are actually present in the melody. There's a huge difference between having 2 instances that are present and only having 2 instances. First one will make your melodies 20 times better. Number 3, always add drums when making your melodies, even if you don't finish the beat. This just helps you know when enough is enough and picking the right sounds and actually knowing if your melody is compatible with drums, because that's the whole goal of it, to being able to send it out to another producer so he can do the drums. If it doesn't sound good with drums already, why should he use it? Or why should it get placed? Another benefit for me is that it just makes sample making so much more enjoyable. And to be honest, I just learned this trick recently when I was in the studio with Marco Lenz about 3 months ago, and that's one thing he's doing, and he's a platinum and Billboard #1 Grammy nominated sample maker. Number 4, it's all about sounds. Having better sounds can make your loops 2 to 3 times better overnight, and that's why a lot of people just tell you that sound selection is key. But why? It's not all about just developing an ear for what sounds good. Of course, that's part of it, but as well you need to have fire sound, and the easiest way I found is just to invest in new sound kits from other producers. Sound kits is the easiest and cheapest way, in my opinion. Of course, you can buy a lot of plugins, I do that as well, but that's just gonna be more expensive. I've never regretted one purchase of a sound kit or of a plugin. To demonstrate this, here's a MIDI from one of my kits with a FL stock sound, and it sounds like this. Doesn't sound too nice because the sound is just harsh, it needs a lot of effects and a lot of processing to make it sound fire. But here's just one shot that I've dragged in. just sounds so much better, even though I haven't added any effects to it and it already has those glitching weird sounds, and that's what you get from sound kits or one-shots. It just sounds better by default. You don't have to do a lot of processing. Of course you can still do the processing, but it's only gonna sound even better. It's just a higher baseline you're working with. This alone can improve your melodies 2 to 3 times by itself, even if your melodic ideas don't get better at all. And number 5, the fastest way to get good at music is to remake the music you love. When you remake the rhythm, the bounce, the sound selection, the BPMs, the arrangement, everything, you kind of learn how to think like that producer. And if you think the same as, for example, me about making samples, if you have a similar process, if you have the same thoughts, you will make similar music and you'll get good fast. Over the last 6 years, I've developed a unique process for flipping samples and delivering value to platinum sample makers. If you want to learn how I do that, check this video out, bro.